welcome everyone to a meeting that obviously we didn't anticipate, but that's how it goes in all of our cities respectively sometimes. So just from me to you, you've seen the board agenda here. This is a reminder. This isn't an official meeting for the board or for the league, but a briefing call. And like Cameron mentioned, if you just heard, the Lieutenant Governor will be joining us at 10:30 to share some news with us as far as local government and some regular communication that will happen there. Again, thanks for joining us. And from me to you, my city to yours, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your dedication. Long hours, obviously, that you've all been putting in, both from the elected official standpoint, from the staff standpoint, from your safety, public safety areas as well. Again, if any of you were able to hear some of the stuff I've shared, both in email and different venues, this is a time for us to step up, right, and show how we can help. If people can make sure and mute either their telephones or the computer until we start engaging here in some question and answer scenarios, that would be great. You can see we've got more than just board members on this call, but staffs of our respective cities and representatives of state government as well. So you can see the agenda that was sent out, and we'll try to get through this as many as we can before we're joined by Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, and then we've got some other elected officials around the state that you've seen news of possibly what's happening with our local areas and school closures and different things, and how sometimes that can weigh a different burden on maybe our resort communities where people think, all right, maybe it's a vacation time. So Mayor Niehaus especially, I'd probably give her a minute down the road here to brief us on that and ask for our help. Cameron, if you want to take it away with item number 2, I'll just lead out with, I've got some response from a few cities of the graphic that Spanish Fork has used, both on social media, both in print and email. To our residents, please feel free to use the language, use the graphic, use whatever you want. But basically what we're trying to do, obviously, is share best practices through this time. What's worked well for cities, let's do those things. Let's help each other out, help communicate to our residents. You remember that they're looking for that, right? They're looking for that hope. They're looking for that clarity, and they trust us to deliver it more than anybody. So let's make sure we're doing that in a positive way. Cameron, take it away. Did he leave? Nick?
Nope, I had muted myself.
Oh,
so
there we go.
Strike one.
There he is.
We will have the Lieutenant Governor join us at 10:30. I sent his Chief of Staff 3 questions yesterday as we were talking about what to accomplish out of this call. As you see in the agenda we sent you, that's a handful of the questions that we have received since Thursday. We've tried to be a resource to cities around the state on both from a legal perspective and a policy perspective. The 3 questions that I narrowed down for the Lieutenant Governor to focus on at 10:30 are the following. First, can we have a regular phone call between state leaders and local government leaders, both cities and counties, to try to enhance the coordination between governments and to the general public? One of the frustrations that I've heard from cities around the state is seeing that City X is doing one thing and City Y is doing another. So if we were to have a regular phone call with the state and an opportunity for cities to communicate with each other, we thought that would be extremely helpful. The second question that we asked of him is around the Open and Public Meetings Act and what potential waivers could exist under the governor's emergency powers around the anchor location requirement or the monthly meeting requirement. So everybody knows I've been in communication with league directors around the country about how their states are responding to COVID-19. In the cases of California and Texas, both of their governors have actually either, in California's case, expressly waived some of the Open and Public Meetings Act during the emergency period, or in Texas's case, has asked for local government input on how to relax some of those requirements during the emergency period. So it is happening around the country. It was not part of the governor's initial declaration, but that declaration expires after a 30-day period. The legislature authorized the governor to extend the emergency until June 30th. What I don't know is if he has to issue another declaration or if the current declaration is sufficient. Regardless, he could, we want to know if he can and is willing to potentially offer some flexibility to local government during this time. Then the third question that I posed to the Lieutenant Governor was around the declaration of local emergencies. In our email to the members last Thursday, right after the press conference, we relayed that the governor's office said they were deferring to local governments over whether or not to declare a state of local emergency. Some cities have, some cities haven't, but all of that predated the federal declaration of emergency on Friday. Now with the federal declaration of emergency and the state declaration of emergency, we've fielded a lot of questions about what that means for local governments being eligible for state and federal funds and whether or not you need to declare the state of emergency. Over the last day or so, you've seen the governor and some other leaders, including Mayor Mendenhall, and I have an email from Mayor Dahle from Holiday today, asking about potential emergency assistance for businesses that are being severely impacted by the restrictions and recommendations around mass gatherings. And so if there are state and federal funds available there, how do we make sure that cities qualify for it? So those are the questions that I asked Lieutenant Governor to be prepared to discuss at 10:30, and I've received word at 9:40 this morning from the governor's office that they do intend to start a regular call per our request between state leaders and local government leaders starting this afternoon, and we will host it at the league. And when I say we will host it, I mean we will use our Zoom capabilities in order to host it. So our staff is putting together the details of that to send out after this board call for 1 o'clock. I'm going to stop there to see if there are any questions from people on the call about what else we want to accomplish with the Lieutenant Governor at 10:30 today, and then we can pivot to how we enhance the coordination between cities and how we as a league staff can help you.
This is John Pike down in St. George. I've expressed in a text to the Lieutenant Governor and to John Hardy concerns about homeless and resource shelters, resource centers. And I mentioned that to Mayor Caldwell just about a half an hour ago. So I'd appreciate learning what the state, what kind of backup support they can offer there. As you can imagine, food and cash donations are very low and volunteerism is low. Creating social distance is impossible and quarantining is impossible. So we're gonna need a plan there. And of course we'll have to do it locally. I'm just curious what level of support the state might offer.
Thank you, Mayor Pike. So everybody knows we've been keeping an internal list of questions, some of which you see on that agenda and that we send out. So if there are other questions like this, please share them now. And then Mayor Caldwell wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about how we coordinate better between cities. So fire away.
Cam, I would just say this is a great start for that, because everything we get from the COG and everything else, people don't know where to go for a central resource. They're all trying to make it up as they go. So regular phone calls with the lieutenant governor and communications from the league and what's happening and recommendations, I think would quell a lot of those fears and make us look like we are coordinated and organized.
Yep, well said.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or things people want to
Yeah.
bring up with the group?
Cam, this is Erin Mendenhall. I
Take it away, Mayor.
wondered if there is, as I'm sure we're all hearing from different citizens at opposite ends of the spectrum of opinion about this situation, is there any doubt that we're in consensus as a body, as the league? I know that we may not all agree on all of the actions that are happening, but is that even a question for us as a body? What I'd love to see is that we're able to at least get behind the state decisions and that we can bring our concerns to those conversations, obviously, as we're about to do with the LG. But do we need to ask that question of our body? Does anybody?
I'm curious to hear others. Yeah, does
Not too
anybody think
far.
that? Yeah,
Mayor,
I can tell you
Go
from
ahead,
Ogden
Mayor.
City's perspective, we're going to follow the state recommendations to the T.
Same with St. George.
Same with Moab, and in more particular direction from our health department.
Mill Creek as well, Mayor, and Aaron, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. We've been plagiarizing your Hello Neighbor form and things like that. So thanks for what you're doing.
Plagiarize away.
West Valley is following the state to the T too.
Ditto with Park City.
And so
I
is
believe
Farmington.
Holiday is as well.
Roosevelt City also.
Grantsville too.
Mayor Mendenhall, in light of this conversation, we'll be sending the follow-up email after this meeting about the 1 o'clock call, and we will add a statement that demonstrates the unity within the board on behalf of local government around the state. I think that would help send a calming message too, that we're all unified in how we're approaching this, and then say as part of our efforts to provide leadership and assistance to our communities, big and small, we've set up this call this afternoon on the league's website. Our resources we're gathering from cities. We'll get a copy of your Hello Neighbor form so that we can distribute it, and that way, I have an email from the clerk of Monticello, for example, asking for help. Just like I've had conversations with large cities like Ogden, Sandy, and Provo, and so we're trying to provide that clearinghouse of resources. And so if your cities are taking action that you want to share with others, we'll take it, we'll put it on the website, and we'll make sure we're promoting it so that other members can learn from your examples.
I really appreciate all of you, and I think that this is an example of what government can do when we use good information and we work together, we work collaboratively, and we work proactively. So I appreciate all of you and the bravery you're bringing to these conversations.
Mayfield's on
Thank
board
you, Mayor
too.
Mendenhall. I think that's a great point of where the league can be a clearinghouse, a resource for especially the smaller communities that don't have, public information officers, that don't, the elected officials, the mayor, maybe one staff person is the public information officer. And so that's a great service that we can be to those communities, saying, here's how everybody is in coordination and in lockstep with the state during this time, and here's the resources that they are sharing to their residents. So again, just like you said, Mayor Mendenhall, rip it off, share away, right? Plagiarize. Let's use the best practices and get that out to our citizens.
Two quick updates on that note. Number one, I've been representing the league on the childcare for essential employees and emergent and first responders work group that started over the weekend. We sent out a survey yesterday morning, and thanks to the communities that filled out that survey promptly, we had over 70 responses in a matter of hours, which has been super informative. We have a follow-up meeting this afternoon. I've met with, or had better, I keep saying meet, we're meeting in this format, but had phone calls with the local government trust, IRMA, and the county's indemnity pool to work through the liability if a city were to open a library or open a rec center to provide childcare for your essential employees. And we hopefully will have recommendations at the state level in the next couple of days, and potentially state financial resources and coordination with child care professionals or teachers or others who can help provide the staffing. So we should have more information. We have a follow-up meeting at 3 today and have more follow-up information to provide to you in the days to come. The second thing is we've been sending out daily emails since Thursday that are COVID-19 related. The readership on those emails has been through the roof. So people are clicking and they are using the resources that we're providing to them. We don't want to inundate them because they're getting COVID-19 emails from everybody. So we're trying to be conscientious of that. But for example, we have an email list of over 4,000 email addresses of city leaders and other community leaders from around the state. And the click rate for that first email was actually north of 4,000. It was forwarded a lot, but it was, we're getting good readership. So as you share resources with us, if it's something that you think, like the Good Neighbor form, that we should add to that regular email, please give us that notice and we'll get it out. We also have set up on our website, and we'll start it in today's email, with a more streamlined way for people to ask questions. And then we will aggregate those questions, answer as many as we can as staff internally, and then coordinate with the state as we put together these regular calls to get answers that way. Then we can use those calls not just to hit the low-hanging fruit, but to be able to tackle the tougher questions, and again, try to have more coordinated response between governments.
Thanks, Cam. Really quick, before we, 10 minutes, we're going to have the Lieutenant Governor join us. And then after that, we'll talk about the mid-year conference 2020. Just so you're all aware, it was set up to be the greatest conference ever under presidential leadership standards. Mayor Pike agreed with that. It was about to be the best. Just like BYU was probably going to win the NCAA tournament. So same kind of.
Yep, tell yourself that. Tell yourself that.
I agree.
Right.
Cousin
Mayor,
Mendenhall, I just
Mayor,
want you to know, you're kind of like Stephen Colbert operating without an audience right now. I know everyone's laughing at you while we're on mute, though.
That's what I envisioned. I envisioned everyone laughing. Well,
Mike, do you want me just to go into mid-year real quick? That way, if the call goes along with the Lieutenant Governor, we don't have to come back to it.
Yeah, can I give Mayor Niehaus of Moab 2 minutes,
Sure,
3 minutes? Mayor Niehaus speak obviously for Moab, but for other communities where if the weather gets better like it might over the next couple of weeks, and people think it's time to take a road trip to some of their favorite places, what we should be doing as examples to our community, rather than maybe overburdening a system that you guys might not be ready for. Can you speak to that for just a minute?
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to address everybody, because we definitely want to get a message out. As you all know, we are very beautiful here in Moab this time of year. And with the resorts closing and with people thinking, gosh, how we've got 2 weeks at least off of school, what are we as a family going to do? And I need to share with you all right now, and I'm asking you all to please share this message with your communities as well. And I'm going to read, kind of what our shared message is from Moab, that the influx of people will strain our healthcare capacity and introduce infection at a faster rate than normal. I just want to remind everybody that we are a city of 5,000, a county of 10,000. We are 2 hours away from a Walmart. We're very remote, as well as rural. So healthcare is particularly precarious for us. People considering traveling to Moab need to understand what their impact will have on our rural remote city. At this time, visitors are asked to stay in their home community. So I'm just going to reiterate that again. Visitors are asked to stay in their home community. The health department is implementing measures to greatly limit the capacity for Moab to receive visitors. These measures include closures of lodging facilities and campgrounds. And Moab City and Grand County do stand behind our health department's decisions as they make them. These are very tough decisions. And so that is really the update from Moab. And, because things have been happening so quickly, the last word from our health department was what were some measured restrictions, but we are looking at pretty coming out today soon, pretty significant closures. And so if people are thinking that Moab is their their isolation destination or their social distancing vacation, that's really what we are hearing from our health department and our hospital. That's really not a safe plan for us as a community. So I'm just asking all of you, my fellow board members, to share that message. That is a different message than people may have heard last week, but that is the message as of today and moving forward. Our schools are closed. Our grocery store, while it has supplies, is struggling to stock the supplies on the shelves. And we don't have any confirmed cases right now, so we are actually at a really good place where we think with these measures we can do what everybody's looking at doing, which is flattening the curve for the spread. And again, I just want to reiterate, we are a rural and remote community, and so the impacts on our community, we can't just bounce to the next hospital down the road. The next hospital is in San Juan County, and they're going to have the same stress that we have here. So I'm really grateful, Mike, that you gave me the opportunity to share that, and I'm grateful for all my board members here.
Thank you, Mayor. Communicate that to your residents in a way of it's for their safety, right? We don't want somebody traveling, somebody injured down in Moab and having the issue of not being able to take care of their family. So it is for their safety that we spend the next few weeks here in your local community and at home, and not social distancing to our great vacation spots. We'll have time to make up the economic impact, Mayor. I'm sure that's on your mind, but we'll have time
Absolutely.
after this is over to make it up. So.
Yeah, once this blows over, I want everyone to come to Moab.
Mike, the same thing applies to Washington County, just to a different, proportion. But yeah, we're seeing some of the same things, and as we take next steps, again following the recommendations of the state and so forth. I mean, if we start closing restaurants to dining in, as Salt Lake County and Summit County and others have, that'll do some of it. But I think we have a lot of second homeowners and other vacationers that, instead of, like you say, going to school, or even if there's been a tournament or a convention that's been canceled, they may still want to come to Moab or St. George or, wherever it may be. And it's just not wise. So we're going to have to, and it's a tough thing, right? I mean, we, like you, Mayor Niehaus, we have a lot of hoteliers who are saying, and restaurant owners who are saying, this is going to kill us. But it's only a blip and a financial concern rather than a health and life or death concern for many.
Can I make a suggestion on that? It sounds like if you could maybe craft just a short video on your own timelines on Facebook that would be shareable, that would be very helpful. Also, it sounds like we should just issue just a message to everybody, just basically stay in your
home community.
Area.
So
Yeah,
the message is really stay in your home community.
That's right.
Stay in our home community. We have the resources to take care of ourselves. Yeah.
I know
So Mayor Niehaus, I think this comes back to what Mayor Mendenhall was saying a moment ago, that after our call with the LG here, we can send out an email saying, here's the overarching thoughts from the League Board of Directors, which consists of mayors from all over the state, including destination communities. We are all unified in our approach, and one of the key messages is to stay in your home community so as not to create a burden on other communities.
I know in our 3-county area out here in the Uinta Basin, the health department's already sent out that message to our residents to stay. So that may have already been being passed along by the health department.
Yeah, and Jewel, I appreciate that comment, but what I think Moab City is trying to do is really empower the health department to take the lead and stand behind their message, because we've got a very sensitive situation with business owners that are very scared. And so it's really important for us to put forward the message of the health department as opposed to sounding like we are making determination from a political place, as opposed to the health department coming from a place that's the medical authority.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
So we'll be sharing the health department's messaging through Facebook and our other social media channels.
Let's make sure we're playing our role. Again, your residents trust you more than they trust anybody. So that message out to our respective residents, saying, hey, make sure that we're heeding the instructions of not overburdening these travel destination communities, is for your safety and theirs. And let's heed those warnings for the next few weeks here. So again, communicate clearly and concisely with your own residents. They trust you more than maybe they trust the Moab mayor saying it to Spanish Fork residents. So just say it. Let your community know. Cameron, are we joined by the Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox yet?
I heard somebody just chime in.
It's Evelyn, maybe.
Oh, hello, Evelyn.
Hi, Evelyn.
We're excited to hear from you, so don't worry about that. Okay, so he'll be joining us any minute here. In the meantime, is there anything else people want to bring up before he joins? And if not, then I can quickly hit mid-year while we wait.
Let's do that. Why don't you hit mid-year, Cameron, and then when he jumps in, we'll cut to the Lieutenant Governor.
Perfect. This will come as no surprise, but we as staff recommend that we cancel mid-year. The CDC's recommendation that came out Sunday night was for the next 8 weeks to avoid mass gatherings of 50 or more people. The president made the announcement yesterday to avoid mass gatherings of 10 or more people. If you take that 8 weeks out to its conclusion, and that's assuming that everything is fine by then, which there's no guarantee of that. That would be mid-May. That puts you right in the heart of your budget process, pushing up against the end of the fiscal year. And then, of course, we have annual shortly thereafter in September. We've been coordinating with the City Managers Association because they hold their conference the same week as ours. They too plan to cancel, and they do not plan to reschedule. but they were waiting to hear what our final decision would be. So our recommendation is that we cancel and not reschedule, but that instead, when things calm down a little bit, that we develop some virtual programming that could be of value to our members, ranging from legislative updates to the other workshops that we had planned, ranging from the quality of health, the quality of life, and QPR workshops that Spanish Fork was going to do, to open and public meetings and everything in between. One thing for everyone to be aware of, and we went through this at our board meeting in October, is that we do generate substantial revenue off of Midyear. The last 3 years, and as a reminder, we only really have good data for the last 3 years because all of the data previous to that from the old administration is really quite useless. But the last 3 years, we've averaged generating revenue about $190,000 a year from revenue, which is about 7% of our entire revenue. And so by not holding Midyear, that would be the hit to our current budget that goes through June 30th. It's the right thing to do in our mind as staff, but we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of those financial ramifications, and certainly everyone is feeling the financial pinch of the COVID-19 virus. We do think that the alternatives of doing some regular webinars and virtual trainings will provide value to our members, and we'll sit down with our sponsors when we can to talk through alternatives that provide them with value so we don't lose them. I've talked to leagues in other states, including the National League. Some of us were back there a couple of weeks ago. Almost every sponsor pulled out of the National League of Cities spring conference because of travel restrictions. And the National League's director basically told me he was going to have to lay people off because of those withdrawals. My hope is that we can find other ways to provide value for sponsors so that the sponsors stick with us through the spring, recognize that they are extenuating circumstances. And it certainly would be helpful for you as a board to help us demonstrate to sponsors that we value their partnership, and we will make sure they still get a return on investment, even though we will not have a spring conference. And we've been brainstorming the last few days different ways to demonstrate that value to sponsors. We'll have a full financial picture for you at the March 30th meeting, but we wanted to pull the trigger as soon as possible about canceling Midyear so we can let people know. The good news is we were able to successfully negotiate with the Dixie Center and the hotels to avoid any cost. We'll be able to credit everything to next year. So that's been awesome. So Mayor Pike, thank you to your community for recognizing the situation and letting us have that credit into next year.
This is Jewel from Grantsville. Cameron, I know that you mentioned about webinars, but should you guys consider just streaming the conference? I mean, within the time frame of the conference?
That's something we're looking at. The tricky thing is we don't know what our day-to-day work situation is going to be at the end of April. You know, hopefully things have calmed down by then, but we just don't know. So everything is on the table right now to look at different options, and we have not followed up with any speakers or sponsors yet to talk about alternatives. We've just been brainstorming them internally.
Cameron, it's Annette Spendlove. When we canceled the Utah Municipal Clerks Conference that was for Institute and Academy that was supposed to be this week, we thought about rescheduling it and decided not to do it all online. And two of the reasons we didn't do it online was, one was the networking, how important that is. And that's so with all the mayors and council members, that networking is so valuable, as well as protecting those sponsors that allow us to have these types of programs. So when you're doing things, those are a couple of things you need to consider.
Cameron,
that's in part why we wanted to bring it up on the call to get your feedback.
Cameron, this is Erin. I would like, or rather to ask Mr. President, if we could ask staff to draft a letter to our major sponsors from the board of directors, thanking them for their support anticipating their continued support, talking about how, cities are more important than ever, blah, blah, blah. Does that sound like something we could do to support, to try to foster their continued sponsorship?
I think that's a great idea, Mayor. I think that's something we can get on relatively quick and send out for board approval. Again, I think strength is in numbers as well, just like the League Army up on Capitol Hill. When somebody says, "Hey, I heard from the Army," let's make sure we're doing that as cities, individual member cities as well. The garbage is still going to need to be picked up. You're still going to go through bonding, items. Parks and Rec is why people pick your city to be in quality of life atmosphere. So let's make sure that I think that's a great idea, Mayor. Let's get out a letter of support from the board as a whole, but make sure whatever services you're using in your community, reach out to those sponsors and say, we appreciate you. We appreciate your service to our community through this time. We appreciate your sponsorship of the league that we're a part of. And so I think from both fronts, a unified message from the board and also individually from cities, be cognizant of that and get somebody assigned to that in your city so they can reach out to those members. We'll get through it together, and they know as much as anyone that the economy rebounds after these times, and their companies will rebound after these times. Many of them are huge Fortune 500 companies that are publicly traded, and I think an individual message from the important contracts, the important members that they have will buoy them up. It'll be something that they will start passing through their ranks as a company. So,
Mike, this is Dawn Ramsey. Aaron, I love that idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. If we can maybe include in that letter some of what we are doing as a board to try to help.
It's very visible that there's a lot of work taking place at the state level, there's county levels, but if we can use some examples of that in this very unusual time,
these are some things that we are doing to try to help support the cause and help our communities and help mentor other communities. That might be a bad idea. And you mentioned just now, garbage is still going to need to be picked up. This is our city manager is doing a Facebook Live event this afternoon. We have a lot of people asking, is the garbage going to still be collected? People are asking questions about basics and functions. And so we're doing a little Facebook Live event this afternoon that the city manager is going to address some of those things and answer questions, maybe calm some of the fears or concerns of the unknown that residents have. So that's just an idea that we wanted to pass along too.
very good. Thank you, mayors. Do we have Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox on the phone yet? Cameron, is he on the call?
I've been texting with him. He's going to be joining any minute.
Okay. Anything else that the board or anyone on this call has to bring in front of this body of how we can be more effective, how the board, but also specifically staff of the league can be effective during this time?
I also welcome other thoughts about mid-year too. I think Annette brought up a great point that we've discussed, which is the loss of the networking value. I don't know how to address that in light of the mass gathering restriction and what the spring holds, but certainly open to other thoughts.
This is David. I think that it doesn't do any good to stream training to the whole league. Although it's nice to train, there's no minimum requirement for generalized training. The value of mid-year is the networking, and if we can't get together, it's not worth doing. What we ought to do as league staff is emphasize that if there's necessary training that people need or want, that we could work out remote ways to do that. We could do some remote planning, open meetings training if they're relying on us to do that, or the technical planning training, or just the information. But I just don't think there's, once you cancel mid-year, I don't think there's any, I think it's not worth the effort to formally try to establish a substitute mid-year training kind of stream or regime or presentations that we would have done there. I think we need to particularize it if people request some online training. And we do that now, but we could just emphasize to them that if they were relying on the mid-year for some kind of training or information, we'll get it to them.
This is Jim Farmington. I agree with that statement. I think one of our biggest assets that we have going right now is that we show our solidarity in adhering to what the governor has said, and that as cities, it's so much easier for me to be able to say to our council, we're following the protocol from what the governor and lieutenant governor have asked us to do. And I think it's great that we can put in the Utah League of Cities and Towns and add to the strength of being able to make these tough decisions.
And I wanted to add too that I think our capacity is going to get pretty maxed out. So even if we start to see the lessening of restrictions in terms of mass gatherings, we're all going to be like putting our pieces back together. So I'm not even sure if I would be like mentally available to network and enjoy mid-year this year, if that makes sense.
I think what Mayor Ramsey said, this is David Church again, I think what Mayor Ramsey said is very important, that we advise our cities that they need to get out information to the public that essential city services will be performed, that the water will be there safe, that the sewer will be processed, that the garbage will be picked up, that when they call 911, people will answer. I think that's what people need to hear from their city government, that you're welcome to walk your dog in the park. You're welcome, we've got to, as much as possible within the confines, express the government is working, that if they need to get a building permit, that there's a way to do that, that if there's all those kind of things. I think that's the best thing that we could do for the public, is to keep people from lining up to buy bottles of water when it's not necessary, because our water's clean, the garbage is going to disappear, the streets are going to be plowed if it snows, that kind of thing, and let them know that things are working, not add to the panic.
Cameron, Jeff Silvestrini, I think using the platform you've established with your Friday e-newsletter to kind of broadcast best practices, I think the league should be a clearinghouse for things that various cities think of doing and spreading those ideas around. I mean, the phone calls we're going to have with the state are great, but just something that gets that word out to help all of us be on the same page, I think would be useful.
This is Jewel. I also I wanted to add, if there's something that we could also convey to this different cities. One of the things I've been kind of thinking of and a little concerned about is just making sure we're still staying transparent to our constituents when we do conduct meetings. So I don't know in what form that should be, but for instance, our city before this happened, didn't really stream our meetings. And now it even feels more so like we've got that little divide with our constituents, because we're still conducting meetings, but now people aren't coming out. And I'm doing my part personally of trying to stream some of the meetings, but I wonder if that's just something we need to emphasize, if cities can switch to something more constituent friendly, that they shouldn't just accept it as a fact that, okay, nobody's going to come to our meeting, so we just won't, we'll just accept that reality or something. I don't know. I'm just saying, like I said, for transparency's sake. And then the second thing is a question about mid-year, is if you've thought yet about how you're doing to do refunds to cities. Not necessarily like that right this moment, but if that's something, how we're handling that.
Sorry, Jewel, how have you thought about what? You kind of cut out there.
If you thought yet about the refund process for the conference to cities?
Yes. So our refund process is anybody who cancels before April 12th gets a full refund, and we would be canceling for everyone. So everyone would get a full refund, and we would waive the administrative fee since we're the ones canceling, not cities. And then we would make sure that we double down on preparing annual. You know, what I'm hearing from the board is that rather than spending time trying to do a remote mid-year or even taking taking some of the workshops from mid-year and making them virtual at this point, let's dedicate staff efforts to COVID response, being the clearinghouse, gathering best practices, and communicating to cities. And then we can reevaluate in a few weeks about other types of trainings. We do need to do legislative updates. You know, the world is still going on, but our top priority will be the COVID clearinghouse work.
That makes sense to me, Cameron.
Thanks, Cameron.
I think that's the best response. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Oh, I was to Dave Church's comment about sort of the role of us keeping things moving. And I think in some ways, under situations like this, that mayors and council people are sort of like parents of the city family, and letting people know that we're going to stay with you. We're going to keep picking up your trash. We're going to keep your park safe. We're going to answer the phone when you call. And I've had a lot of feedback from the daily videos that I've been doing. I think they're on Twitter and Instagram. They might be on Facebook. I don't know. But I encourage you all to do those kind of personal updates on what's happening, what you're feeling as and not too deep probably on what you're feeling as a city representative, but that daily connection is, people are hungry for that. So I encourage everybody to do something along those lines as you see fit for your city.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great advice, Mayor. I think that's important. Yep, I think that's important for them to see that daily connection and the reassurance that the essential services are going to continue to go through. One of the themes that was going to be part of the conference in April was what we're doing in Spanish Fork to try to help the physical health and the mental health of our community. You know, the Fit City initiative, spearheaded by the league and through Intermountain Healthcare. And so I fully plan on being able to record something with the league and Susan's more than adequate capabilities to be able to share a message that can go out to the membership of what that would be like. I think we're going to need the physical health, the mental health of our community through this time and after as well, to be able to share best practices of what we can foster and grow in our communities as far as people getting access to physical health and mental health needs.
Perfect. Thank you, President. I'm pleased to announce that we've been joined now by the Lieutenant Governor. Correct?
Yes, I'm on, guys. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. The people you have on the call, in addition to league staff, is the League Board of Directors, which includes elected officials from St. George, Mayfield, Moab, Ogden, Provo, Salt Lake City, West Valley City, and Spanish Fork, up and down the state, as well as senior staff members from a variety of cities. So you have 40 people who are called in, and then there are other people who are on the phone with them. So I'll let you take it from here, Lieutenant Governor. I'll rebrief them on the questions that I sent to you in advance, and people are excited to hear from you and appreciate your time.
Great, and I apologize for joining you late. And sorry, it's just we've got a million things going on, as you can imagine. But there are a couple things I want to talk to you guys about, and then I'm also going to apologize. I haven't had a chance to get through the questions. It's just been one of those years, I guess. So we're so grateful for your individual leadership. Right now, there's a critical conversation and a critical balance going on. Let me be clear. We've never faced anything like this in our lifetimes, any of us, and so we're all working very diligently to figure our way through this and to do it in the most responsible way. Obviously, I know there's been a lot of talk about bending that curve, and that's so important. I just got off the phone with Dr. Mark Harrison, who leads Intermountain Health. I was on with the University of Utah Health System last night, and they are very concerned about that piece. Some troubling news out of New York. We're all watching what's happening in Italy, but in New York, they realize they're going to run out of beds very quickly. The good news is we made some early decisions here in the state that are going to help us. Those decisions, of course, closing schools and encouraging people to work from home. We've shut down restaurants and bars and by shut down I mean at least dine-in options in Summit County and Salt Lake County. I believe Mayor Niehaus, you're working on that down in your neck of the woods as well. The biggest problem we have right now is testing. I just want to be very, very upfront with all of you about this. It's been well documented, the problems with testing starting at the federal level. We've got some good news and today that a Utah manufacturer of tests has gotten FDA approval, something we've been working on for several days. Unfortunately, it doesn't help us very much right now, which I know sounds terrible. There's another limiting factor is what we call reagent. It's the chemicals that we use to process the test. And there is a severe shortage of that. So we're working to see if we can manufacture that here locally, if that same company can manufacture their own reagent. The best example I've heard for those of us that aren't scientists, it's like getting a printer without the ink. So we have the printer, but we don't have the ink right now, and that's what we're running into. And the reason this is so important is if we could test thousands and thousands of people every day, we could actually limit the amount of closures that we need to have, because we would understand where the virus is and how it's spreading. But when you don't know, we have to assume that it's out there and that it is, and so we have to practice social distancing and be very careful with that. Now, on the flip side, we're in danger of tanking our economy in very, very serious ways. I mean, far greater than maybe we've seen in our lifetimes. The good news is if we can bend that curve quickly and really ramp up testing, this could be more like a 9/11 type event instead of like a Great Recession or heaven forbid a depression. And so we're really working hard on the economic piece, but this is where we need your help. We are not shutting down the state, and we are not shutting down the economy. And closing restaurants and bars is one thing, but closing every business or every office or every city in the state is another thing. And so we do want people to work remotely. If we're not working remotely, we want people to practice social distancing. We should be screening people as they come to work to make sure that they don't have any symptoms, any cold or flu-like symptoms, and send them home. But what we don't want you to do is completely shut down city offices, especially when we're talking about essential services. We have to include decisions that impact the economy. So for example, construction is an industry that will work during this type of a crisis. They can practice social distancing. They really can do things right. And so if you're stopping all permitting, that's going to have a really negative effect on the economy. And we want to encourage you to not do that. Again, we can do this we can wash our hands. We can do things remotely. Think outside the box about the way to streamline approval processes that maybe don't take paper or otherwise, but we need to be thinking like entrepreneurs. I give you a great idea. I was just talking to a friend who works for Larry H. Miller. They're now driving to people's houses and getting their cars and servicing them. That's a great way to do this without by limiting public interaction. That's the type of real innovative thinking that we need to make sure that we can keep things going without putting everybody in the same room together and potentially infecting each other. Does that make sense? I hope it does, and I'd love to have some feedback.
I have a question, LG. Thank you for your leadership. I just want to ask that part of the messaging that comes from you right now is for people to stay in their home communities. As we all have seen, a lot of people are coming to Moab right now. We can't handle it. And so what we are asking is for people to stay in their home communities. And what I'm asking for you today is to include that in your message with everything that you've just said, and stay in your home communities. If you would help us with that message.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think we can do that. Again, I would like to point out, we only have, well, as of yesterday at 1 p.m. when we announced these things, we had 39 positive cases in the state of Utah. Now, let me be clear, we think it's far greater than that. That's the testing problem, right? However, of those 39, 10 of those are people who are visitors here. And that's where the Summit County has really become where we've seen that in fact, the first case of community spread that we saw was in Summit County, and we're pretty sure it came from a traveler who was coming in there. So we perfectly understand, and that's an appropriate message. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, this is Cameron again. I announced to folks that this afternoon we will have start a regular call with the task force and local government. Do you have a sense of how regular those calls are going to be? And then we are going to be sending out the notice to that call here in a few minutes. And we are asking people to funnel their questions through us as league staff so that we can answer the questions that we can answer and then narrow down the focus for the questions for the task force.
Thank you. So we will be meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. I anticipate that we will move these to twice weekly. We haven't had that conversation internally, but that's the thought I wanted to do today, so that we're doing at least twice weekly briefings. So we'll probably do the Wednesday one, and then maybe a Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, something like that. So we'll work through that internally, but please plan on the one tomorrow.
You mean today, right? Because the local government call is today at 1.
Oh, yes, today at 1. That's right.
Yep.
Sorry.
So we'll say it's today at 1, and then we'll tell people to plan on a regular call, but we won't tell them exactly when until you've got a chance to finalize it.
Sorry, I have so many different calls going on. I got them mixed up. Today at 1. Yes.
Yep. No worries. The other two questions revolve around local declarations of emergency and the Open and Public Meetings Act. I'll start with the local declarations of emergency. Now that the federal government has declared a state of emergency, we have some cities that have declared, some cities that have not declared. The state of Utah has declared. We're receiving questions about eligibility for state or federal dollars to help local governments or to help the residents in those communities. On Friday, on Thursday, I asked the question of Ron Gordon of whether cities should declare local emergencies. His response was that the governor's office was deferring to local governments. Then the federal action happened on Friday. Do you have any updated recommendations on whether cities should declare, recognizing that on the call right now you have some cities who have declared and some cities who have not?
Yeah, I don't have any different guidance than what Ron gave you. I don't believe that there will be any impact on your citizens or your ability to access funds as they become available, whether or not you've declared that state of emergency. Now, if somebody has a different recommendation, I don't mean to counteract that in any way. Maybe David, you do. I would leave that up to the local communities for their own recommendations. It does give you some different authorities in the case those need to be used in a state of emergency. I defer to legal experts.
Yeah, I don't think this is David Church. I don't think it makes any difference on the availability of funds. I think if you've got a local situation that's different from the state or the national, that you need to take some local emergency powers that the governor is not taking or authorizing you to take, that then perhaps it may be helpful or necessary. But I defer to I know there are some city attorneys that may disagree or give another advice, and I'm not going to second guess them. I just don't think it does any good for us to tell every mayor in the state, declare an emergency and add to the mood of the communities by suddenly saying, oh, this must be even worse than we thought here locally, unless there's some purpose for it. But Cameron's asked.
David. Yeah, I think you're right again. What we're trying to do now is to kind of lower the level of panic that's out there. And so unless there's a specific necessary reason, and I would also add that your local health authorities, and I would work very closely with them, even if you do have a local situation, they have very broad powers at their disposal and can often using their authority to do whatever needs to be done. But again, I'll defer to the locals.
Perfect. And then the other question, and other board members may want to chime in as well, revolves around the Open and Public Meetings Act. We have, in state law, cities are required to have an anchor location if they are doing remote meetings. There's been a question over whether there would be the ability for the governor to relax the definition of the anchor location so that a council meeting or planning commission meeting could be conducted entirely remotely rather than with that anchor location. The governor in California, in his declaration, relaxed the Open and Public Meetings Act for a period of time. The governor of Texas is considering doing likewise. Has there been any discussion with the governor or with your team around the Open and Public Meetings Act and flexibility for local governments for this short period of time?
Yeah, the only discussion we had was early on, and that was an encouragement to make sure that every group, every community had in place the necessary preparations and the necessary proclamation or legislative action that they have to take to make that possible. We have not had this specific conversation, but I'm happy to take it back to them, and I can see the wisdom in it. So thank you.
Yeah, as part of that, Cameron and Lieutenant Governor, this is John Pike, by the way, public hearings, if those could too be remote, obviously if you didn't have an anchor location, then they would need to be. That's some of the concern.
Thank you. Yep, agreed.
Any other questions from board members for the Lieutenant Governor?
We have a question online that talks about prioritizing some of the tests when the tests become available. We know that's the part that we're struggling with right now. When they come available, is there a way to prioritize it for first responders to try to make sure we isolate them as much as possible if they happen to test positive?
Yeah, so that's actually happening now. We are running tests, and right now our top priorities are first responders, those in the medical community, and those with severe illness because of the caretakers that are with them right now. So that's, again, unfortunately, we are doing that. By the way, this is a problem in every single state. I
guess we're meeting over here. I'm on a conference call with Lieutenant Cox because they're still going over all the stuff. And
you got somebody
talking about.
Muted. There we go.
Make sure you mute yourself.
And so yes, that's a great question, and please know that rationing is happening right now.
Cameron, this is Don Christensen or Mike, either one of you.
Yep, take it away, council member.
Okay. The question that I've had come up is, what about some of our subsidiary meetings, like boards of adjustment, planning commissions, things like that? Can they be done remotely also?
This is David Church. Every public body could adopt a policy allowing electronic meetings and done remotely. The only issue is, under the Open Public Meetings Act, you're supposed to have adopted an ordinance in advance of doing that. And so you'd want to get that done somehow. And then as Camber pointed out, the act requires an anchor location. Now that can be worked around with the numbers we're dealing with, the 10 even of that. You need to have somebody there that allows a member of the public who shows up to hear and listen to the rest of the meeting. But you could limit the attendance to 10 or less, or 20 or less, whatever the number is. So we can work around on all public bodies could meet remotely under the Open Public Meetings Act. It's just a matter of just doing it.
And I would just add that the president yesterday gave a recommendation that we limit any public gatherings to 10. And I would add that those are 10 healthy people. And specifically, if you're over the age of 60 or have an underlying health, not be one of those 10. So, so please be careful out there, and let's get those policies enacted. I do wonder if maybe the governor could also just do that as a blanket, even if you don't have a policy to allow that over the next few days.
That would be nice.
And Lieutenant Governor, this is Cameron again. That's what happened in California, and I can get you the language of how the California governor relaxed the Open and Public Meetings Act temporarily, and I'm happy to be a resource for you as we work through that.
Send it my way. Let's get the language and let's see what we can do.
Lieutenant Governor John Pike again. Just a question, and I've received back some, at least some indication from Jonathan Hardy that there's some discussion in the works, but homelessness, homeless shelters, resource centers, as you can imagine, donations of food and money are down, and so is volunteerism. So I know that certainly all the communities that have those kinds of resources are going to be stressed. And there's, of course, the problem of, social distancing within those facilities, quarantining ability within those. So anyway, just food for thought there. I've already been reached out to this morning about, how can we and how can the state help with those efforts?
So John, thank you. And I got your text. Apologize, I haven't been able to reply yet, but this is
no problem.
To do that. So one of the things we've been trying to do is build infrastructure around this and setting up different task forces to focus on these separate issues. This is one that's on our list today. It's already kind of been happening. We have a subgroup that's been working on it, but we want to formalize this and get them really active, and we're going to need help from our local communities. I will say we really need to start thinking strategically for those of us that have actual shelters or resource centers, about what happens if we start to see spread within those resource centers, and having alternate locations available for that. We may have to requisition a hotel or a motel potentially, where we could put those who are infected. These are the types of things we need to be thinking about. Of course, unfortunately, we have lots of empty hotel spaces these days, and the ability to put people who don't have any other resources in those. We will have some funding available for those types of decisions as we have to make them. We have state funds and federal funds that are coming online, but we really need your strategic thinkers locally in your community to start coming up with ideas and plans for if we see that happen. And so I would include the medical community in that, and of course the nonprofit groups and faith-based groups that work so closely with these, to think, okay, kind of worst case scenario, where can we put people so that they're not constantly infecting each other?
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. That's what we'll be working on starting today.
I have a quick question. Lieutenant Governor, we're seeing other cities who are now issuing shelters in places and kind of mandatory lockdowns. From our perspective, we're looking at just trying to run future case scenarios so we're ready and we're prepared if we do need to move that way. Under what circumstances would you guys look at doing that?
So, you know, again, these are the things we hope we never have to do, but we are working closely with our medical community on this. It would be if we started to see unchecked community spread, a rampant community spread, and the modeling would show overwhelming of our healthcare facilities. That's, you know, we're in this tricky balance between being as cautious as we can be, but also not killing every piece of our economy. And if we thread this needle right, actually no one will ever thank us because they'll think we did too much too early. That's just how it goes. But that's the thing. If we end up overwhelming, and by the way, I don't know if you saw the numbers out of New York today, but Governor Cuomo said, in fact, maybe I could read them to you. Well, I've lost them already, but here's the concept. They think within 45 days, as this thing peaks there, they're going to need 32,000 ICU beds. Right now, they have 3,000 ICU beds available. They're going to need 55 to 120,000, I think, regular hospital beds. They have about 50,000 hospital beds available right now. And so, you know, if we, that's the type of panic we desperately want to avoid. We're seeing mortality rates right now out of Italy that are north of 5%. I saw some last night as high as 9%, where if you actually get ahead of this, we're seeing mortality rates as low as 2% and hopefully 1%. By the way, 2% is still 20 times higher than the flu, which kills 500 people here in the state of Utah every year. So it is a serious thing, and I don't want to underestimate that. But we do think that we really are ahead of those other states in what we're doing, and so we encourage social distancing. We're encouraging people. We will hopefully you all receive the president's guidelines. We'll send those out to you. We think that those are the right guidelines right now, and we feel very good about that. We were actually going to announce something almost identical, and then because the president put that out, we did not yesterday. But that's the critical balance. And so when our experts tell us this is moving too quickly and we've got to do more, that's when we'll coordinate with you and let you know. And with that, I probably have to go join another call. I apologize. I may need to jump off now. Is that okay?
Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you for the time.
Thanks, guys. Really.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Appreciate your leadership and your help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you.
Well, Mike, it's 11:15, so we've gone longer than what we told people, but thank you for making the time this morning. Are there any other questions that people want to bring up while we've got the core group of city leaders on the phone, recognizing that there'll be another call with state leaders at 1 o'clock this afternoon?
No, I just want to say thank you, Cameron, for your work on getting these calls set up. I have been a little horrified to see other elected officials with conflicting messages to their public. And so I think it's just going to be so helpful to have these regular updates so that we're all making sure we're on the same message and getting that information out to our public so that we're not deviating, because I've been a little bit frightened to see how different some of the messages have been that are put out there. So I appreciate you guys setting these up. It's going to be really hugely helpful for us.
Cameron, it's Don.
Cameron, so we don't. Go ahead, Don.
Do you need a motion to ratify your decision about the conference?
Don, thanks for bringing that up. We don't. The bylaws require the board to set the annual conference, but does not say anything about the board setting the mid-year conference. So seeing that this is a briefing call. Yeah, no, thanks for bringing it up, though. And Evelyn, thanks for your comments.
Hey, Cameron. This is Andy from Park City.
Go ahead,
Andy.
Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, I had a question for the Lieutenant Governor, but waited too long, and I'm wondering if you have any information or have been hearing anything. Certainly, we went on full shutdown this weekend in Park City and have virtually nothing open except for essential services. But that means we've got about 15,000 hourly workers that were immediately put on leave. And just wondering what the state might be working on to give some assistance to business and workers that are going to hit hard times in a hurry.
Mayor Mendenhall, are you still on the call? Okay, since she stepped off, I'll tell you what I know. In fact, part of the reason why the LG was late getting on our call is because he was in a meeting about economic impacts of COVID-19 that went long. The state is working with the Salt Lake Chamber, Salt Lake City, and other stakeholders around some sort of mitigation plan. I hesitate to go further than that because I haven't been in the room for those meetings. I've been in the meetings around the first responders. And so, yeah, we've received the same question from the Mayor of Holiday and from other cities that have emailed us. So we'll have it added to our list of questions that we're collecting, whether to bring it up in this afternoon's call or even the outreach we're doing in between calls to state leaders. So yeah, so thank you for bringing it up. That's a huge concern. And I know that there's work taking place. Things are just moving really quickly.
Okay, that'd be great. You know, certainly it's a secondary priority, but it's going to rise to the top pretty quickly.
Hey, Cameron, this is Jim from Farmington. Hey, and I understand all of the, you know, the things that are happening in the communities where they're laden with a lot of part-time people. But let's not forget the rest of us also have part-time people that when we shut down, like our gym, you know, and not let people, or our rec centers, a lot of those people are part-time as well. And also with first responders. When we talk about fire departments, there are so many, a lot of us share the same type of firefighters, but they're just on different shifts from different communities. And so as we look at part-time work, those people will be affected.
Yep, I agree. Thank you for bringing that up too. So I've made a note of that as well.
Cameron, so we don't overload you and your personal phone number with texts and your personal email. Is there something where you want us to send as far as clearinghouse, best practices, questions, things like that for all of the membership to send something to? Maybe that's coming up with a new email address or something where there's a big collection point for the league.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And we did yesterday create an easy to use system that we'll email out after this call to the full members when we announce the 1 o'clock call, saying please direct your questions here. I want to make sure that you as board members have direct contact with me. And then what we'll try to do is the board, let's make sure we're in regular communication between you and me. And then with general questions and recommendations and best practices, we'll funnel through this other system that our staff will collect, put on the website, and then we'll make internal assignments of who to follow up or who to do the follow-up on the research or the legal questions.
Carson just shared the Qualtrics link that will be the gathering mechanism for those questions that we're getting from our website.
Perfect. And that'll be sent out here. My last question for you is we've been sending a daily email, and we've been trying to make sure that that email is substantive with recommendations and new things that are useful for your cities. Is a daily email too much? Is it, or as long as it's useful information, you don't care how often it comes as long as it's relevant?
Well, I'm sensitive to your
situation's changing daily.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to your time, but I personally have enjoyed reading your emails and forwarding the information on to our staff. I just think it's been good. Whether you do it every day or every other day or however you see fit, I'd like the communication to continue, but I'm also sensitive to everything you're trying to do.
Perfect. Anybody else?
Just reiterating again, stay in your home communities.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great, Mike, that's everything I've got.
Thanks again, everybody. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your membership. Thank you for what you do for your communities. Again, I can't stress it enough. We are going to look back at these days, and there will be plenty of times to say, what did we do? What could we have done better? But I promise you, your residents are searching and are looking for confidence, facts, and compassion. And so be that for them. you're the best position to do it. And so let's step up, lean into it, and make sure we're there for them. A unified message from all of us, taking heed of the precautions from the state and the federal level is the best thing we can do right now, and making sure we're taking care of each other. We're the front lines of it. Let's be it. And thank you for all you do. Reach out if you need anything from any of the board members, any other community, and we'll be there to help each other.
President Mendenhall, great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Take care.
Our next scheduled call is March 30th, but if we need to do something before then, we'll let you know.
We'll see you for sure March 30th, if not before. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone.